little life update. I need to figure out how to simplify my life.
Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the Karis Project action plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states, and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Ciao, guys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Karis Project podcast. Today we have with us Nikki Moonitz and our host, my daughter Kaysha. Actually, Nikki, this is also Nikki's show, so she's a co-host. And so she's from California. So introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, my name is Nikki, and I'm a native Californian. And that's about, I just follow politics and post my thoughts, and I'm kind of a defector from the cult of the left, grew up in it, was surrounded by it. And once I started paying attention, walked away, and have just been pointing out what's wrong, what's really going on from the way I see it ever since. So, hi.
Yes.
And hi again, Kaysha.
Yes, and it's, we came across on X, and I've heard some of the more intelligent speaking coming from you. I was like, I like this. Because we have too much, there are things that make you want to beat your head against the keyboard after watching what they've said. And speaking about stupidity, let's get right into it. We'll talk about Mr. Zelensky himself meeting up with Trump and J.D. Vance, because, it speaks for itself. So let's get into it.
Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2015.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and
of
he
the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you
You're
speaking about?
gambling with
What are you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Yeah, I mean, Zelensky is either he's brave or stupid, but I'll probably go with stupid over brave because he's playing with fire. He's coming there as a beggar trying to beg for money, but he's trying to act like he's in the driver's seat. He comes in his all black attire, like, I don't care for you and whatnot. And he thinks he's going to come into Washington and be like, bend over and give me money. What do you think? This is Biden? I mean, that was insane. Thoughts?
Yeah, that was crazy. I watched the entire thing 3 times now, and honestly, Trump let a lot roll off before it got to that point. There were times where Zelensky was saying things, and I was mad before Trump because it seemed like Zelensky wanted Trump to declare that, come out completely against Putin and for Zelensky. And I kind of got the feeling that Zelensky was saying there couldn't be any compromise or concessions. And the thing is, well, how are you going to end this war then? Because from what I've read about Russia, they'll win wars just by sending countless of their men to die. They've got that seems to be their MO. How is Ukraine going to win this?
Well, they're not.
So, yeah.
They're-
And what exactly was Zelensky wanting when he kept saying a security guarantee? Because if he's saying he wants Ukraine in NATO, well, I mean, if I'm in charge of Russia, that's unacceptable, because now I mean, how do you survive if you're Russia, if that much is in NATO?
Well, you have to sit down and think about what provoked the war. Nobody wants to talk about it. But the United States came out and they said that they had a bunch of biolabs in Ukraine that were funded by the West. So, and then I looked at some of the documentation. There was a bunch of leaks and then outbreaks by those same biolabs, a bunch of them. And so if you're Putin and they were cooking up biological weapons like they were doing in Wuhan, but they were doing it at your doorstep, well, what would you do? You think if Russia put a bunch of biolabs in Mexico that the United States was going to take it lying down? No. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I got no sympathy for Zelensky. You shouldn't have had those biological weapons labs there, and you wouldn't have got invaded. So sorry, so sad. I would have just been like, get out. Trump was very kind with him, very patient.
But that wasn't even the clip where he said that, because he never even told him in that clip, stop talking or get out. They were like real patient about it.
He should have said it a long time ago. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how calm Trump was through most of that. When you watch the whole thing, there were so many times where Zelensky was saying things and Trump's face just remained totally calm. He let things roll off. I was surprised. But I think Trump wants to negotiate. He wants to make a deal. You can't negotiate if you're not willing to. Both sides have to give concessions. I mean, there's no way. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, he has to stay calm like that. And actually him staying calm like that gives everyone the opportunity to focus on what's really going on, so they can see just how clearly backhanded and out of pocket that Zelensky is, because Trump's calmness actually gives people the opportunity to focus on how much provocation Zelensky is actually pushing forward. When he, like Trump said, you don't have the cards. You are not in the position to be doing what you're doing here. He's literally just doing provocation. And then what? So that people would go around with their Trump derangement syndrome, so that Trump will fly off the handle, and then the public will be like, oh no, you see, Zelensky's the victim. Like, Trump derangement syndrome, Trump is awful, orange man bad.
As they cheer for more war.
More war and more death and more destruction and more financial devastation.
Yes, and Zelensky's trying to act like he's in the driver's seat, and he is
which is mad.
And
the fact that he said that they're going to feel it. Oh my gosh, that's when I really that's when I was just confused. I was like,
that's a veiled threat. Yes.
That's why I was like, there's no way he just said that. And the way he was leaning over, even in their space, like, it's not just what he's saying, it's the actions of everything that he's doing in that moment publicly on a world stage, which is so flagrantly disrespectful. Like, the guy, that's why he was like, that's why Trump said, you're trying to do World War III right now.
Yeah,
like, this is what he was threatening. Yeah, he was threatening him.
When Zelensky said that about you'll feel it over here, I wasn't sure, because I know there's a language barrier. He very well may have meant it as a veiled threat, but part of me thought maybe, because he kind of looked confused by the reaction, that maybe he was trying to say that if we don't get Russia under control, they're going to expand and come after us. But I don't believe that for a second. I think Russia is just trying to keep NATO from being, having all the strategic advantage. They don't want Ukraine in NATO. And also at the beginning, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this by any means. I've been cramming it all in ever since, the war started. But at the beginning, I was in spaces where Eastern Ukrainians were saying that first off, they were being denied, services and protection from the Ukrainian government. And they've even said that they were being attacked and killed by the Ukrainian government. So at that point, I was like, well, I can't just declare a good guy and a bad guy, because I might be supporting something that's evil. I don't know. So I've just been in learn mode with this. But then I heard it again just the other day. I was in a space again, and the Eastern Ukrainians were saying that the Ukrainian government is coming after them. And so from my, 20,000 mile view, it kind of seems like potentially there's a kind of a civil war, for lack of a better term, going on inside Ukraine. And, there's a lot who want to associate with Russia. And so it doesn't seem like a very black and white issue to me. But one thing that is 100% black and white is obviously Ukraine needs to stay neutral. Just like I think Gaza needs to be neutral. There needs to be a buffer. I don't think Gaza should have, I don't think Israel and all the people who want them dead should share a border. Just like I don't think Russia should have to share a complete border with NATO. There's already a lot of NATO countries bordering Russia, but Ukraine would be like the deal breaker, obviously. So it's just, not everything can be boiled down to there's a good guy and a bad guy. That's not how the real world works. And I've never heard a single person explain to me why on earth Russia would accept Ukraine being in NATO. And they all tell me, oh, those are Putin talking points. Putin doesn't care. I'm not even basing it on what Putin said. I haven't listened to what Putin says. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I were in charge of Russia, I wouldn't want Ukraine.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I remember when the Berlin Wall fell and they were talking with Gorbachev and all that stuff. And one of the deals that was made was that NATO would not advance towards Russia, that they would just leave them to be there. Now NATO is bordering Russia. They just said, so they're violating the agreement that they made with Russia. And then, by the way, we're going to put these biological weapons labs right on your doorstep, but not just one or two, but there's like 30.
Yeah.
That's aggression. And I'm not sitting down and saying Putin's innocent, but you got to sit down and say, listen, you can't expect that to happen. That's how countries get invaded.
Well, that's why when Zelensky said, you're going to feel it over here, and he kept repeating it, and that's when Trump was like, no, that's enough. He knew exactly what he was saying, because he knows the amount of biolabs that he has down there in Ukraine and what they were doing, like what their involvement was with everything that happened the last 4.5 years. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And maybe we don't know how exactly he means that you're going to feel it, but he has multiple means. He doesn't have the strength of what he's saying to accomplish the weight of what he's saying, but he's talking about doing something disgusting and underhanded, and that's short.
No, it seems like what he's demanding is that we be his henchmen, or the West.
Yes.
Because he can't.
With no authority, or else he's going to do something. He's going to do something grimy. Honestly, Ukraine, I'm sorry. Ukraine is always, at this point, Ukraine is a country that is involved in a whole heap of mess. As far as I'm concerned, Ukraine is like down the toilet. And I have no personal effects for Russia or Ukraine. I could care less. It's just what we're watching happen. And I'm just like, the country, it's completely, the leaders at least are completely rogue. The citizens, like you were saying, talking about how they're being actually hunted down by the actual government.
What were you saying?
I don't
know. Let me think. I don't remember. But because whatever Kaysha said after made me think of something else, but I don't remember that either.
Okay.
So,
you're talking about bordering NATO advancing to Russia, and how the agreement was that they don't.
So here's the thing is I know before when the invasion first happened and I wanted to learn a lot about it, what I did was I pulled up articles and videos about Russia and Ukraine from before the invasion because everything looked so much like propaganda to me once the invasion happened. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to like necessarily say invasion, but I guess technically Russia came in. So I'm not attributing any kind of morality or immorality behind that. Not that invading is right, but that's exactly what happened. So anyway, before this happened, there were so many articles and videos about the Nazi problem in Ukraine and the corruption in Ukraine. Oh, that reminds me of what I was going to say. I was going to say what it seems like is that after the Cold War ended, for the little bit I've studied, and again, I'm still in learning mode, so I may be wrong on some of this stuff, but it seems to me that Ukraine has been kind of just used by the West to for obviously money laundering and corruption and stuff like that, but also to gain a strategic advantage over Russia. This entire thing feels to me like a proxy war for us. And it has from the start. And a lot of that for me is instinctive. The propaganda is off the charts. The whole character of Zelensky, the way he's been paraded around and the costumes. And now, to be fair, when he said he would get a costume, I've heard that when you translate the language, it kind of means suit in his language. But it has seemed like a costume. He has seemed like an actor throughout this entire thing. And when you study World War II and things like that, that's how propaganda has always worked. And I don't like this entire clique mentality, but it's actually emotional manipulation where you're not allowed to question certain things. You're not allowed to say certain things, or else, if you even question the narrative, you're pro Putin, which is just stupid. Putin probably is a bad guy. I have no doubt, but that doesn't mean that the other players are good guys. And since when do we even trust our own government? Because I haven't trusted my own government since, really going back to 2009 when I started paying attention. But it's only gotten worse and worse. I don't trust my own government. So why am I going to just decide in this case, they're the good guys and to buy their narrative? Again, I'm not saying Russia's the good guys. Sometimes there are no good guys, but everybody wants to survive.
Well,
that's the bottom line.
This is my point, is that here in Canada, our troops are eating spoiled rations, right? They don't even have proper equipment. They've had helicopters fall out of the air because they didn't have the equipment to properly maintain them. Now they're watching military equipment getting sent over to the Ukraine that I can guarantee you there's a lot of men in the Canadian military that are pissed off seeing that money go over there. They're like, we got to eat spoiled food. We can't properly get our stuff done. We can't protect our own country. So that's not my problem. What Zelensky did and allowed the United States to go in and put those biolabs, well, just shut them down, tuck your tail between your legs, and make peace, because we can't afford to pay for what you allowed to happen in your country. Not my problem.
But I get the feeling the left has no interest in peace. Why? They benefit from chaos. When countries are about to go bankrupt, wars tend to save them from that. They have a lot of dirty business that they wouldn't mind wiping the slate clean. They're losing, even with all their propaganda. They're, like conservatives are kind of gaining steam in the culture. And the left doesn't like our system of governance because it's governed by the consent of the governed, and they don't like that. They worship the government. They want the government to have the power. So what's their incentive? I don't see that they really lose anything by a war. And when they can paint it as good guys and bad guys, well, that's the draw of the left, is you get to be a savior. You're the good guys, and that's the other thing is with the left, they decide who the good guys are And then whoever the bad guys are, you don't have a choice. There's nothing you can do to get out of it. And I can't help but get the feeling that there's some of that at play with Russia. We've heard our entire lives Russia's the villain. Just because I've been told that my entire life makes me even more skeptical of it. And again, I'm not saying they're not, but I don't like being pressured to hate or fear certain groups. I need to be convinced with my own eyes that I should. And all I've gotten so far is these people pushing the message.
Well,
that's it.
I've never had any problem with Russians, ever. I saw that they had a bureaucracy, something like what we have now, that was just robbing everybody, and they had a system of elites and that were controlling them, and they were putting their own people to die. So I'm like, well, I don't like you. I don't like the guys that are doing that. But the average Russian guy, it's not my problem. He's suffering worse at the hands of his own government. So
Yeah.
we have to stop looking at it as like us and them, because you have to look at the reasons why, right? Because Putin he's an ex-KGB. Is he a clean guy? No. But does he want biological weapons at his doorstep funded by the United States? No. Because if you're going to betray your own country, what's going to make you loyal to him? Nobody can trust somebody who sells out their own country. You can't. So he's not stupid. Go ahead.
Well, and he would go down in history as the one who committed national suicide for Russia. It may not happen right away, but the people in power, even if you completely trust the people who are in power now, and this is what the left always fails to do, you have to imagine that power in the hands of a bunch of people who aren't even alive yet. And then you have to believe that it's not going to be corrupted. And in what universe does power not corrupt? So you have to think, whatever you support, whatever new power grab or additional power you support now, you have to be willing to support it in the worst possible hands. And if you don't, you have no business supporting it now. So there's no scenario where he should trust Ukraine being in NATO. None. No matter what, even if we were best friends. But the whole point of NATO seems to be that Russia's the bad guy. That seems to be, they're clinging to, and the Soviet Union was horrible. I've read the Gulag Archipelagos, but what's ironic is I see that mentality more in the left, in the West now, than I do over there. Who's censoring? Who's having show trials like the kangaroo freaking J6 stuff? Who's arresting people for Facebook posts?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Whoops. What?
Hi, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free. I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever...
Wow, I've got a bad trigger finger today. Bad. All right, let's get back to it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I wanted to say something first, but my finger went off a little bit fast today. So we're gonna go and look at what, just kind of going back on Zelensky here. He actually was campaigning for the Democrats, right? And we're gonna listen to a clip. This is where I'm looking at the audacity level of Zelensky coming in and starting to demand it, regardless of whether he was threatening that he was going to do something, or saying that Putin's just going to steamroll through here and then come for the United States, so you're going to feel it after they've just laid waste of Europe. Either way, he's an idiot.
When in history could you ever go to another monarch, their country, and start campaigning for someone else to take their position? You don't see that happening. Or at least they would not have lived if they tried. Like, that would be considered a very treacherous thing to do. Why are presidents of other countries allowed to come to the US and help campaign for another candidate? It's backwards.
Yeah, it is. It's nonsense. Let's watch what they said on Fox about this.
Yesterday, Zelensky thinks he's going to get a better deal from that he can get a better deal from Donald Trump by holding out. But based on everything that we know about Donald Trump, that's not going to happen. And these Zelensky political geniuses should have told him beforehand that it's possible J.D. Vance or somebody in the room might bring up that he did campaign alongside these Democrats in the 2024 cycle, because there's one person in the world with an encyclopedia in their mind of everybody who ever campaigned with a Democrat or another Republican, and that is Donald Trump. And we've got this video. There they are in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Zelensky went to Battleground, PA, with Josh Shapiro, the #1 Harris surrogate for a while once Biden was sidelined, and Bob Casey, who was running, is right there behind him. He lost. And they were watching these missiles that the U.S. was paying for and sending over to Ukraine. Look, he's signing them. And he was acting like he didn't know what Vance is talking about. Oh, you went and campaigned with the opposition. That's what he's talking about.
Not only did that happen, but I believe Donald Trump tried to report this as foreign interference in this election. And by the way, repulsive, signing these bombs that are going to kill.
And yes, in the same outfit that you wear to the Oval Office, by the way, at the bomb factory.
He has like one costume.
And of course, foreign interference also being the premise of the entire first sham impeachment against Donald Trump in the first place. So it's kind of worth noting that. But it also goes back to the point with Zelensky. You have no cards, bro. The only cards you have are the cards that President Trump is providing you, or the American people are providing you. That's the only reason you're here in the first place. And for him to get all cheeky and talk about, oh, no, we're not playing cards here, like refusing to accept. It's like dealing with like a drunk, insolent teenager, trying to have a logical debate with him. And he's just being like, nyeh, 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 nyeh. And you can't be surprised that it ends up pissing off Donald Trump.
Yeah, and J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance.
Everybody else.
I think the role of Vance.
I told you it was treason. I told you. Trump said he reported it for foreign interference in the election.
But that's just like the audacity. Like that's brazen. Like that. I didn't even know what to say with that. That was dumb. Like the people around him. Like, I wonder who's telling him what to do, because clearly he was not thinking that one through. That wasn't going to work out well for him.
I think someone's telling him to do everything he does. I think he's an actor. He was put in that role, and other people own him. I don't think he's really doing anything on his own. And I think he campaigned for Kamala because those are the people who own him, I think there's so much shady stuff that happened in Ukraine. And I need to read Dan Bongino's book. I know he talks about, in his Follow the Money book, talks about the insane in Ukraine is the chapter, which I haven't read yet. But there was a lot going on before, the impeachment was wrapped around that. I think there's a lot of crimes that a lot of people are involved in over there, and they all have a vested interest in Trump not getting back in there. I think that's a lot of the opposition to Trump in the first place, is that they've all been playing this corrupt, shady game for a long time. And he came in and didn't intend to play along. And it's more than just protecting their grift. I think they're protecting their their butts. I think there's just
Yes.
so much to expose, which is why they want him dead so badly.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead, Kaysha.
Oh no, I'm agreeing. Like, yes, they're so tied up in so much corruption. Like I said, even the bio labs that they have and all the stuff that they were doing, the election interference, all sorts of stuff. They were all tangled in this web of nefarious, egregious evil the last couple of years, and who knows how far back. And they know that Trump is going to give them a lot of problems, and they are not appreciating that.
That's actually
It seems to me.
Go ahead.
It seems to me it goes back at least as far as Obama, because I mean probably further, but that whole Maidan Square thing. At the very least, we had our hands in that quite a bit, and it seems to me that they elected a pro-Russian president, and then there was a regime change there. And when I look into it, I see a lot of patterns similar to the BLM riots and January 6th. And so it seems like, yeah. So that's another thing. Why is Russia going to trust? Oh yeah, sure. Come move a little closer. Come move a little closer to our yard. It's to me, it's the same with Israel. I don't care what your view is on whatever came before October 7th. October 7th happened, and I can never trust you again in my yard or across my fence. You guys need to be far enough away that we don't have to worry about you. It's the same thing for me with Russia. Regardless, if you remove all the politics aside, just knowing that Russia's the designated bad guy, the designated, one that everyone has to protect themselves against in NATO, then they can't be surrounded by NATO. It just boils down to survival.
It's provocation, and that's really kind of where we're at. And a lot of this stuff, I actually put some of this in my report about what the American government was involved in with respect to the biological weapons program. And what we were reporting over here, Putin was pulling out of the Ukraine, and it agreed with what both sides were saying. So if you have the West agreeing that this was taking place and Putin pulling out things that were consistent with what the West was saying, we're all lying? Right? Like, this is...
Didn't someone over here, and I can't remember who it was, a lady, admit that, like, on a house floor when she was in her testimony,
Yes.
she admitted.
Yes.
And she said that they were afraid that it was going to get into the wrong hands. An American, elected official said that.
Oh, and
So
yes, the Americans, it was this Secretary of State? I can't remember
can't
which,
remember
but
her
it
name.
was one. I can't remember. It was a woman though, and
Yeah.
and it was on the website. Pulled it right after I saw it. I went straight to the website and I looked and I said, "Lo and behold, there it was. There it was. The admission that they had those biological weapons programs in there." But then it's not even just that, right? Like, it's all of the other things that are going on. That's a money laundering pit.
And if you're just another country and you're looking at the West, I mean America, England, and the left government, they've gone insane. So if you're in another country and you're looking at our country, the UK, and you're like, okay, so they're giving kids puberty blockers and telling them they can be born in the wrong body and chopping their body parts off and forcing you to affirm their delusions, and having millions of fighting age men illegally fled your borders, come across, and they get benefits from the taxpayers. It's like you're on the outside looking. Oh, and they're censoring your speech, and January 6th is just like the Reichstag fire of our day, as far as I'm concerned. They're coming after their own citizens. You're these other countries looking at us, and you're like, these people are insane. I don't want anything to do with them, and I don't want them gaining any kind of a advantage any more than they already have.
Well, speaking of insanity, what we're gonna kind of shift gears a little bit because we're watching this whole globalist agenda going back and forth, and we're gonna listen to about some of the drugs here. This is Bonnie Henry. She's like provincial minister. She looks over the health ministry in Canada, like all of the hospitals in the health region in British Columbia. And she talks about addiction, which is tied to a lot of what you're saying here, because they do a lot of the gender reassignment stuff, but they're also putting the drugs and the teaching kids how to safely use them in the schools, which is going to only fuel that whole nonsense that you're going on. But listen to how retarded she sounds. And yes, it might get censored, but it's true. Listen.
It is a very different type of crisis, and it is a reflection of a lot of things in our society that have been going on for a long time. So it's rooted in colonialism, it's rooted in poverty, it's rooted in social disconnection and racism and other societal things that need to change. And it's exacerbated by the fact that we don't have a very strong coordinated mental health and substance use support system. And when we declared the public health emergency, my predecessor, Dr. Perry Kendall, in 2016, and I was part of that, and we did have regular updates. We continue to have regular updates. One of the biggest reasons for declaring an emergency across the province was to build that recognition that this was people, these were our community, our family, people across the province. It wasn't just the downtown east side.
Yeah, so I mean, the drug problem is racism and colonialism.
I mean, you know what they do? They use these buzzwords that trigger, your emotions, and you think, oh, well, I oppose racism and I oppose colonialism and I don't want poverty, so I'm on this woman's side. And I don't even know I don't even know what her point was. That was like a total word salad.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no idea what she said. And my brain started turning off because I actually started getting so annoyed. Like, I was like, what are you even saying right now? Like, be so for real. Like, you're not saying anything serious. And the soft tone, and it's always the same tactics because they learned this in university. And I can always tell when a woman is well educated in university because they drop their tone when they're going to say something really manipulative and really conniving and evil. They'll drop their tone real soft, and then they'll start saying like you said, word salad of nonsense. And then people will be like, oh no, my feelings, racism, I could never. God forbid. And then they start, indulging in the nonsense, and then they just let it take over them. It's ridiculous. It's retarded.
I think it's by design because they want people to think that it's above their pay grade, that they're just not smart enough to understand these things, but they do understand the feelings. Because I've seen that my entire life. And that's why they can't make their points in writing concisely. And I go out of my way to. Because they try to use as many words as possible so that you're confused by the time you're done reading it. And you just think, oh, well, they're smarter than me, and I'm just going to trust them because I don't understand this stuff, and I want to trust the smart people who care. And they do that on purpose.
It's a bunch of unnecessary details that do not apply for the circumstances or situation.
Right. And real quick on what Kaysha just said. In school, I always loved math, but I used to hate word problems. And I figured out the reason I hated word problems was because they put in a bunch of stuff that didn't matter. And once you learn how to find the fluff, the stuff that doesn't need to be in there, and you remove it, then you can solve the equation. And it's the same with debating these people. You look at all the stuff they write and you remove all the stuff that doesn't matter and get down to the nitty gritty. The problem for me is I get so irritated reading one lie, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. And sometimes they're so far gone that I'm just like, I don't even know how to respond to this because you just put about 40 different things down there that none of which are true. And I don't have the energy. If you believe all this BS at this stage of the game, you're not interested in knowing the truth.
Exactly. And the problem is that they are You know they're lying because they're not outlining the circumstances by which these things are happening. They're just saying things are happening, and they're just telling you these things are the outcomes of things without actually demonstrate the circumstances of the situations by which they're being created. So they're lying consistently, and it's blatant to your face. It's like, you're just telling me that the sky is orange and I'm looking at a blue sky right now. You're not telling me, how this even happened or whatever. And it's clearly not.
And then they when you're done reading it, my head hurts because I can't understand how somebody can contradict themselves that many times in the same statement. And like, I mean, your head just explodes. You're just like, how is this even possible? But
well, I think the educational system isn't teaching the students how to think at all. Like, when I'm in debates, some of the most highly educated people I'm debating, they can't think. All they can do is parrot what they memorize.
Yes. And
yes. School only teaches those people to memorize, and they're like, oh, I got my PhD. I'm like, yeah, in memorization and slavery and indoctrination.
We'll touch onto that, but I wanted to go back onto the drug issue here, because when you listen to this woman and you think about most of those super labs that they're finding in Canada comes in the province that she came from, you listen to what these guys are saying and you begin to understand more about why Trump is doing these tariffs.
Daniela, I'm hearing from current and former high-level police officers that say, despite what the Globe and Mail or Daniel Dale at CNN are reporting about, 40 kilograms is it. No, Canadians have no idea the level of criminal money laundering running through our cities that's connected to this. So that's the issue. I just want to add, before we look, where do we go from here? What Mark is saying about a hurricane, that hurricane is going to hit us with 25% or more if we don't put a real fentanyl czar in place. That is someone with credibility, that the U.S. government, look, they're not going to be fooled if you put a Justin Trudeau office lackey in that position. They need someone that can assure the American government that the RCMP will work with the DEA if they want to put a wiretap on a triad boss or a cartel boss in Vancouver and Toronto, because it didn't happen before. The last point is, look, this US-Canada strike force on organized crime, I believe the American government is going to want to see legal memorandums of understanding signed with Ottawa saying this isn't just pretty language to put off a tariff. This is some sort of joint laws between Canada and the United States where we will have, you working with the fentanyl czar. If the FBI and DEA want to come up to Vancouver and bust one of these triad command control money laundering nodes, which, by the way, I'm afraid, I'll say it, some of these bosses are connected to funding of the Trudeau Liberals. I'll just drop that because it's true. And I believe the Trump administration knows it. So the Americans, we're now, in the Germany-Greece European Union relationship. Canada and United States are there. They're not trusting our word anymore. They need to see our homework.
I just want to say here, Canada did appoint a border fentanyl czar. I'm going to tell you who it is. The former RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, who I personally contacted and handed over evidence of a distribution system for a biological weapon that was tied to the biological weapons that were transferred to the Chinese nationals, and she told me to go back to the RCMP that tortured me. This was also the one who was there covering for Trudeau in the federal, like they had a parliamentary hearing, and she was just like, I don't know.
Did she not step down? Did she not step down because she got caught?
Yes.
And then they made her the border czar for the fentanyl?
She was the absolute worst commissioner for the RCMP ever because she's in Trudeau's pocket. So, yes. This is who you have to the north.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Government's not going to keep itself in check. People are getting rich off these things. they're going to appoint people who keep the grift going and who keep the power going and who are going to play along. I put so much thought into how do you keep the government in check? You can't count on the government to keep themselves in check. And I realized the people have to, and that's why you have to pay attention and you have to question everything and you have to vote accordingly and hold these people accountable, because it's insane and naive and just ridiculous to assume that this time your government is incorruptible and that last century can't be repeated. I mean, I can't tell you how many Americans, especially, on the left, think what happened, it's ironic enough that they call everybody who disagrees with them Nazis, but it doesn't occur to them that they could be, I call them future boxcar loaders, because they dehumanize. That's what they are. They're calling everyone that they're calling Nazis, which ironically, they don't call the Azov Battalion Nazis, as they demand to send those people more money, but they call all the conservatives Nazis without even knowing what that means. And in the process, they're saying any action against those people is justified because they're evil, bad, super dangerous Nazis. And these people would totally be willing to load all these so-called Nazis onto the boxcars. They don't realize they are the freaking Nazis. And I don't mean they're literally Nazis. They're the same mentality that has supported or enabled mass evil throughout history. And they're convinced they can't be the bad guys, and the people they support can't be the bad guys.
All right, right here we're gonna close this segment off here, before we go into the next one. So if you're watching on Lindell TV, you will see it the next day. But if you're watching on the stream, just stay tuned. So we're gonna get into some of the other politics. One thing I'll say about Canadian politics, it is funny. They're dumber than Americans, and they're really funny when they're dumb. And so we'll just, Nikki, tell people how they can reach you, how they can support you, since this is now your this is your show that you're going to be regular on. And also remember to subscribe, because it's got its own channel now, so on Rumble. So you'll see it in the description.
Just tune in and help me figure out how to do this podcast stuff and build an audience, and give me feedback what you would like for me to do differently. And I'm on X. That's where you find me.
Yes, and her links are in the description as well. If you're watching on X, on the Karis Project, no, not X, sorry. If you're watching on the on Rumble, you will see the links in the description on the Cali Corner channel. And if you're watching on Facebook on the Karis Project, you will also see that. I will close this segment with a prayer, and I'll give Kaysha her final thoughts, and then we will take a short break, and we'll be back. So, Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us. And Lord, I ask of you this day to give the men and the women the strength to stand up and do what is right, and hold the government accountable, and also to come together to rebuild their families, their community, and our nations, so that we can have some sanity in our government and some relief from these tyrants, is my prayer. In Jesus' name,
amen.
Amen. Dad, thanks for the prayer as always. Thank you for joining us, Nikki. We'll have you on. And guys, please follow this channel so you can, and hit the notification so you can actually see when Nikki's going to be streaming on here. She has great insight, as you guys can see, and we always love having her on. Anyways, if you're going to be on watching on Lindell TV, you'll see part 2 tomorrow. And if you are watching on any other platforms, just stay tuned in the next couple of minutes, and we will be on the other side for part 2. Anyways, thanks guys for your time and considerations, and we will catch you in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will ciao.
Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the Karis Project action plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states, and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall.
Hello, and we are back with the part 2 of Cali Corner with Nikki and my daughter Kaysha, all kind of hosting this together. So, yes, anybody want to start off with the kind of thoughts from where we left off?
What are your thoughts on, I only barely saw the post right before we started, but Keir Starmer saying something about UK boots on the ground in Ukraine. What's going on with that? I didn't have time to dig in because I just saw it right before we started.
Well, basically the UK is like wanting to continue to provoke war, right? And so some of the other countries as well. Canada's towing the line. Justin Trudeau's like, oh, we support what's going on over there and sending more money and so forth. And so, I mean, it's just a lot of nonsense. And then Jagmeet Singh, who is the leader of the NDP, he actually started to like take shots at Trump and the United States for what was going on. And I'm going to pull up a clip here because there's a girl, her name is Jasmine Liney. I believe she's from Winnipeg, if I'm not mistaken. She gives a breakdown of what Jagmeet Singh is saying because, I mean, he's an idiot. He is like a spineless jellyfish. He is the worst. Google him. He is like the worst politician ever in Canadian history by a long shot. But let's listen to what she has to say.
I hope that you're taking note right now how corrupt and infiltrated the Canadian government is. Canadians overwhelmingly, over 70% of us, demand an election right now. We have not had a functioning government in Canada since late September, early October because of their corruption. And how humiliating it is for Canadians to have Jagmeet Singh, who is a leader of essentially nothing, to be on CNN today talking about the Trump tariffs as he's this big tough guy. He is the weakest human being in the world who has absolutely no spine. Well, he doesn't represent anybody in this country. He's not government. People don't want him. People hate him here. Yet he's on CNN trying to plead the case for Canada in the most embarrassing, weak fashion. You also have Chrystia Freeland pleading the case for Canada amidst Donald Trump tariffs. Chrystia Freeland is the same woman who put our country in debt over double what they had anticipated. She is the one who froze the bank accounts with a smile on her face of people who were protesting the lockdown measures and protesting the government that is so freaking corrupt. And then we also have Mark Carney, another sign of corruption right here, who is actually Chrystia Freeland's son's godfather. Mark Carney is a man that most people in Canada didn't even know existed up until 3 months ago. Oh, he saved Canada during, the near economic collapse we had back in 2008, the recession. Oh, he saved Canada. No, he didn't. He was the governor for the Bank of Canada at that period of time. Do you want to know who saved Canada during that? It was the Conservative Party who was running the ship at the time. Mark Carney then went on to go be the governor of the Bank of England, where they still are suffering as a result of his policies. Don't believe me? Listen to what their own former prime minister has to say about the guy and the warnings she is issuing to Canadians. Oh yeah, and by the way, Mark Carney, why the hell is he even on CNN pleading a case for Canada anyway? Mark Carney is not a member of parliament. He hasn't even lived here or worked here in over 10 years. He describes himself as European by nationality, not Canadian. This is on video. He holds 3 passports, by the way, and the only reason why he was allowed to run in this election is because right before he announced he was doing so, he bought property in Canada again for the first time in 10 years and divested in all of his other businesses, which you can guarantee he is still very involved in. Oh yeah, and the complete economic disaster, investment disaster that Canada has become was all under Mark Carney's watch, because Mark Carney has been behind the scenes on paper since 2020, advising Justin Trudeau financially. He was just in China last year discussing trade between Canada and China. That's a pretty weird thing for an unelected person to do who has never worked in politics, doesn't even live here, isn't it? So America and every other country, take note of how much these global elitists are panicking. They can't do any of this same media in Canada because most of the outlets here are finally starting to call them out on their BS. So what do? They go on over to the US to try to plead their case because nobody will listen to them here because nobody wants them.
Yeah. I like her.
Yeah, that was good.
Yes. So this is what you have to the north of you. And our politicians, people are getting disgusted. When Justin Trudeau shows his face, people curse him 6 ways from Sunday. He has to walk with a bunch of security. Canadian prime ministers never used to walk around with visible security like that. Now, he has to have them all around him because people want to tear him apart. They want to tear him apart. They can't stand him. And Jagmeet Singh, he's an idiot. He's all he has is, yeah. But this is what you guys have to the north of you, and you wonder why Trump wants to put tariffs on this.
I thought that all of the tariffs that Trump was proposing were reciprocal, that he was proposing the same amount of tariffs to countries that they're putting on us. Is that correct? Does Canada have tariffs on us?
No. No. The Canadian tariffs are because of what is going on, right? He
said because Canada was very abusive.
Fentanyl is just pouring across the border, and Canada's government
that's right, it's because of the border
is out of control. They're just criminals.
Worse than Mexico at CPAC, the Canadian border.
Mark Carney, WEF. Chrystia Freeland, WEF. Justin Trudeau, WEF. So many of their Liberal Party, WEF. right? We're dealing with the big uniparty that's worse corruption than in Washington, and they won't listen to the people. It's really what it is.
I mean, that makes sense to me, because now that everything is interconnected, leaders of different countries have no incentive to just be loyal to their country, because they're looking at the entire world as their chessboard, and they're willing to sacrifice their own country to rule over a bigger piece of the pie, which is why I think you're seeing Western countries allow the mass migration. It's like we're paying for our replacements. And I know people talk about this great replacement theory. I haven't dove into it much, but I know that the left was touting, demographic destiny and replacing conservatives or whatever for a long time. But my point of view isn't based at all on narrative or what I've heard before. It's just from looking at patterns. It makes sense. If now you can just rule over the entire world instead of each person having to fend for their own country, then maybe some countries, are directed to let their own people take the fall. And then on the other end, they'll have their utopia where they're ruling over, fewer people, which the left is already anti-human anyway. They don't care if a bunch of us die. So it makes sense to me that, people like Trudeau and Zelensky and Biden, these people, Biden is a different animal because he's older. He's just been corrupt his whole life, and he's, compromised and owned. But all these younger people, they're a cast of characters. They're like a bunch of young actors who've been brought up for these different roles, and then they're told where to go and what to do. And Trump seems loyal to America, but Trump clearly isn't WEF either. Wait,
well,
yeah, WEF.
And that's the whole point. We need to get things done. And speaking about this whole situation, you look at with what was going on with the Epstein, the whole Epstein release and stuff like that. You look at that, and it's like you have to begin to start thinking and asking what is going on, because even though they didn't do what they should have, which I agree they should have did way more, they still demonstrated something even though they gave nothing. And this was because at the end of the documents, they had affidavits and civil court documents in the FBI file from Epstein. And people are like, well, that doesn't matter. I'm like, yes, it does. That demonstrates to you that they use evidence from civil courts for criminal investigations. And they tell a lot of people that they don't, but they did with Epstein.
Interesting. I didn't follow that. I've been extremely skeptical to the point of cynical that we'll ever know that full list, because I think every time I see some crazy corrupt J6 judge or lawyers or whatever, when they're doing stuff that doesn't make sense to me, I wonder if they're being blackmailed. Now, some are just crazy, but some of them, it seems like a complete 180 to what they were before. And I think my theory on Epstein Island is that it's just this treasure trove of blackmail material, and everybody they have video or documentation of, they own. They do what they tell them to. So it's hard for me to believe we'll ever see everyone on that. It's just.
I agree. I said let's look at a clip of some of the people that would be on that list that we know of that they're protecting.
Well, we know he was on the plane, not only on the plane a couple times, multiple times. He traveled internationally with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was on the plane called the Lolita Express because it supposedly had a bed in there where Jeffrey Epstein had young girls. He has been a friend of his, a continuing friend of his for years and years. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who hasn't spoken to him in many years, over a decade, after he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for bad behavior. So that's the difference there. And I think Americans see the two-tier justice system. But, you know, we don't know. They're saying Clinton has not been to his private island, but he has traveled all over the world with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know.
Is it true that Jeffrey Epstein had a picture of Bill Clinton in the blue dress on his wall?
I don't know if that's actually a thing, but people have been saying this over and over again and showing a picture of Clinton in a blue dress. I wouldn't be surprised that they have something like that, but whether it's on his wall, who knows? I can't.
I mean, it's really not hard to believe Clinton was there. It's harder for me to believe Trump was compromised there, because I think they would have come out with that a long time ago. They could have figured out a way to come out with that without coming out with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, if he was there, they would have finished him with that a long time ago. The whole files, you would have known what everyone ate from the moment they stepped foot. You'd have known what they did in the bathroom. Like, they would have had those out if he was involved, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you've got to sit down and think about this whole aspect of what's going on, because when we look at Epstein, everybody's looking forward at Epstein, but what they're not looking at is what is happening on a local level. Because for example, like, you're looking at the policies of the drugs, right? And so forth. And we're going to look at a clip of this person on drugs. And when you understand that when they're using the government policies, what they're doing is on a local level. When you get drugs and you push drugs, what happens? Human trafficking goes through the roof. What do you have to protect them? Well, you need the same systems on a local level. So if this is happening rampantly on a local level, what do you think is going to happen on a level like Epstein? Because there's like an Epstein in pretty much almost every area of the country running on a local level. This is the way it is. Like, and when you watch how they have pushing these drugs, look at this girl on drugs, and then you can sit down and see how easy it is to get control of something. This is disgusting.
I don't know if you're seeing this. My name is. You can write it down. I'm a girl. I'm missing right now. I'm trying to get back to my best friend's house.
You'll be right there.
House.
What do you want?
Okay. My name is. I don't know if you've ever heard of my name, and I'm on it. The only thing I've been on is, and I promise you that you can.
You go to the house.
If you don't believe me,
Can you go to the house?
I'm trying to.
Listen to me.
I'm sorry. I'm so.
Listen to me. Go to the house.
I'm so sorry if I woke you guys up. If you want me to leave, I can. My house is just down there, and I don't feel safe walking because multiple men have stopped by and honked at me, and I don't know what the.
Go to the house next door. Go next door. Don't go to my house.
Okay.
Go next door.
So,
wow.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Because I don't know how really to decipher what was going on there, because she walked away like nothing happened. And she was like, okay. And then all the emotions stopped. And then I'm very confused with what. Was she trying to get someone to open the door so that they could hurt someone?
The point is that girl is so out of her mind. It is very clear. But when people are that, she doesn't know whose door she's going up to. We don't know. But in that state, when people are high out of their minds, that's an easy target. Easy target. And they're getting so many people on drugs that are that incapable of their surroundings.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit with Kaysha here. She almost looked like and she was definitely on drugs. I'm very good at spotting that from experience.
Oh, yes.
But she almost looked like either she was trying to get them to open the door to let in another people, because she kept looking to her side. Now, I understand she's saying that men kept, I don't know, I couldn't quite understand what she was saying, but she wasn't looking, if I recall right, she wasn't looking both directions. She just kept looking the same direction. And so, I mean, I wouldn't have opened that door.
No, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either.
Gotta call the police.
Regardless of the situation, this is the effects of drugs, right? And regardless of whether these people or not, like, being that baked out of your mind, somebody can do anything to you, right? And if her compadres that were maybe hiding were that baked too, who knows? But you know that.
What did she say she was on? Do you know?
She tried to, on her mouth it said alcohol. She was not slurring her words.
No, that wasn't alcohol.
No, it was not. It was drugs. She was high as a kite, and it was very, very evident. But when you start seeing that, you start seeing people making bad decisions, right? And whatnot. Let me find this clip here, and we'll get a little bit of what actually happens to people when they're on fentanyl and so forth, because this is what they're pouring across the border like crazy, right? And Canada is the worst offender for fentanyl. They're talking about only how much is getting caught, but you have the longest undefended border in the world, and most of it is pouring through, and it's not getting caught at the border either. And when people are getting busted in the United States, and some of it, they can't trace where it comes from by the time it's changed that many hands. So what you're really actually catching is not even a small fraction, because most people are worried about the Mexicans bringing it across the border. Nobody's going to suspect the Canadians. And it was common knowledge when I lived in Vancouver that drugs were just flowing across the border from down the West Coast. So let me just pull this up here. But yeah, this is out of control. This whole drug thing. Where is it? I'm old.
No worries. By the way, guys, I am looking at my screen, but it looks like I'm looking down because I had to move my computer because my computer almost died. So now it's plugged in, and I'm looking down more than I was. So it's like I keep trying to look up at the actual camera, but
here we go. We'll play a little bit of what she talks about, the fentanyl withdrawal.
The reality is people do die from opioid withdrawal. They die from the consequences of dehydration, which gives you a sense of just how bad the symptoms can be, that people can have such profound diarrhea and vomiting that they can actually get dehydrated to the point that they die from it. When you think about someone using opioids, whatever reason they start using opioids, which could be for pain relief, it could be for fun or experimentation, it could be for emotional pain relief, what happens early on is that people experience really pleasurable effects generally from using opioids. And so that can be a sense of calmness, of euphoria, again, of relief of any sort of pain, both emotional, relief of anxiety and depression, and physical pain. But what happens is the body is amazingly capable at relatively quickly recalibrating when there are changes going on in the body. And so over time, the body and the brain gets used to having opioids around. And we see this shift from using to feel good to needing to use just to feel normal, and then needing to use just to not feel sick. And people get trapped in this terrible cycle where they don't feel normal, they can't function, they feel horribly ill unless they're finding and using opioids, often multiple times a day. Opioids bind to opioid receptors in the brain, which are receptors that get activated when you have opioids in your body. That activation leads to a cascade of effects. So opioids block neurotransmitters that communicate pain. So they block the sense of experiencing pain. They increase dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone that allows you to feel happy and have a great mood. They increase serotonin, another sort of feel-good hormone. They block the stress response, that sort of adrenaline fight or flight response that we get. And that's what leads to the calmness, the anxiety relief, the pain relief that people get when they're acutely using opioids. And the reason it matters to understand that, because withdrawal is the exact opposite. So if you think of a seesaw or trying to balance a scale, if you're loading in weight on one side and you're trying to keep balance, you're going to load weight on the other side. And that's essentially what the brain does. So over time, you actually have lower dopamine levels, lower serotonin levels, higher stress hormone levels, because you're trying to balance out the changes that opioids have caused. Now, if you all of a sudden remove that counterweight on the scale, you're going to flip yourself into the opposite effect. And so in withdrawal, you see this flooding of stress hormones. So all of those things that come with opioids, like calmness and feeling happy and not depressed and warm and safe and having pain relief, is exactly the opposite in withdrawal. So for a short-acting opioid, like heroin or now fentanyl, opioid withdrawal often kicks in sometimes as soon as 8 hours, certainly by 12 hours after the last time that people use. And it peaks around 2 to 3 days, but it can last for 5, 6, 7, 8, or even 10 days. First, they get intense drug cravings, which is an urge to want to use the drug that you know will make you feel better. So that's not being able to think about anything else. People start feeling restless, anxious, agitated. They start sweating. They might notice that their nose is running, their eyes start tearing, they start yawning. They get belly cramps. They get muscle aches. It starts feeling like really a terrible, terrible flu. If the person doesn't get opioids or use opioids, that gets worse and worse and worse, to the point that people get severe diarrhea, severe vomiting, terrible anxiety, depression. They can't sleep. They feel like they're crawling out of their skin. They get goosebumps. They can feel like they have chills, just this terrible sense of sort of dread and doom in your body. I think we all can identify with sort of basic primal urges, so thirst or hunger, where if you ever were completely starved of food or didn't have access to water, you would do extreme things to relieve that sort of physical drive. And
that's what they're putting onto people, and the extreme amount of symptoms that people have. And a lot of people, I knew people that were addicted to opioids, and it was terrible. It was extreme.
Have you ever seen someone try to get off heroin?
Oh, Lord God. Yes, it's bad. It is very, very bad.
It's brutal to watch. My best friend, she's been on and off heroin for going on the 4th decade. And I mean, I watched her get off, and one of the dangers is you get off and you're doing great for a while, and then you just, I don't know, once you get off drugs, the hardest thing is learning how to lead a life that doesn't center around drugs. And that took me decades once I quit, once I got off everything. But at least I was a mom, so I had a role to automatically dive into. But some people, that's not enough. And you don't learn how to deal with life stuff. And so then the drugs are a way to numb everything. And that's another thing the left has been like programming young people and people in general, that they shouldn't even have to tackle hard things in life, that life isn't supposed to be hard. And if it is, you're being exploited or abused or oppressed. And so then they don't learn how to deal with these things without drugs. So it's just a never ending cycle. You have to learn how to face hardship and conquer it. And that's more addictive. Once you get on the other side, that's more addictive than any drug, to when you start conquering stuff. But so they don't want people to even know they can. They want people to think it's all out of their control.
Yes, and that's the whole point. They want people dependent. Because the one thing I could sit down and say is that drug trafficking and human trafficking, they go hand in hand. And when people are desperate to get rid of their sickness, they'll do anything. A lot of the people that they do get this stuff on, they end up they get the girls that they go into sex trafficking. A lot of them, they get hooked on drugs, because if they get them hooked on drugs, they know they're not going to run away, because when they run out of money, they can't get their drugs. This is disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And a lot of like the failed coping mechanisms when like they're, intoxicating people, when they're drugging people, sometimes it's not just the drugs, it's the that's a huge part of the problem. Sometimes it's the behavior modification that they've put them through. So it's like they might not even be someone who has a preference for vices of like alcohol or drugs, but they might suffer with the same tendency of, you know, some self-destructive behavior after that, or not knowing that they can win on the other side because, they're suffering with not being able to push themselves beyond what they were dealing with, like emotionally or mentally, which is also unfortunate because it's kind of like I don't know really what to really call it, but I've seen that as well.
Okay, let's just take a my pillow break this time, so I get to say something before I actually cut you guys off. We'll be back in a minute.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 6-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
And if you need any My Pillow products, you can see mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942 and use the promo code Karis. Get some good pillow stuff and all the other stuff that he's got over there, like towels and, well, I'm not the cross kind of guy, but if you wear that kind of stuff, go ahead. And the sheets and whatever else that you have there. So let's get in kind of back to what we were saying. So when you look at the government allowing all of this stuff to come in here, you see a tie between the drug trafficking and the sex trafficking, because I mean I've seen this from when I was a kid. Unfortunately, the first time I saw exposed to human trafficking was in church at like 8. Somebody took somebody's daughter and pimped them out, and the guy was, pretty much in tears about his daughter being gone. And almost the whole church knew where his daughter was, and nobody said anything. That made me want to strangle people as a little kid, because I'm like, this is disgusting. I knew what happened. I didn't know where they were until I was older. But just understanding that was done, and I don't like that. And so, and then you see a lot of this rise in like pornography, and you look at what's going on with Pornhub, where people are getting raped and they're putting this online. And a lot of the times people are being drugged in that manner and doing this. And who is responsible for this when you look at the government allowing boatloads of fentanyl and all these other drugs coming in? And like, you've got a criminal cartel, and these guys are all in bed laundering all of this money in the Ukraine and other places like this to destroy our country. And you have to sit down and ask yourself, when I see somebody like Zelensky coming back in here and demanding money, when they're laundering so much money over there, right? And this is some of that stuff that's tied to what Putin's pulling over, and they don't want that stuff to come out. That's why the left is all like, Putin bad, 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 because he's exposing stuff that we know about, right? And I mean, Putin doesn't hate the average person in the West. He hates the people that are interfering with his own country in his backyard. He doesn't want that there. But I'm gonna just sit down. Go ahead.
Well, it's clear to me. Like, I don't know what's going on in Putin's head. I don't know what's going on in anyone's head, but it's clear to me that they they make it very clear who they don't want us listening to and who they don't want us saying anything in line with. There's a lot of things I've said that people are like, oh, well, that's Putin propaganda. And I'm like, I've never listened to Putin. And I'm not even getting my views from other people. I'm just thinking things through, and this is what I conclude. But there's so many things that's one of the reasons I left the left. You don't get to tell me who I can listen to and who I can't. The more you say I can't listen to someone, the more determined I am to listen to them, because I'm thinking they know something you don't want me to hear. And I'm a strong enough thinker that I can listen to people that are bad or that have horrible ideas, and I'm not going to just like jump onto that bandwagon. I'm not going to give up my access to information because there's weak thinkers out there, and you don't get to tell me who I can hear. And they do that with. Go ahead. No, I was trailing off anyway.
No. Yeah, no, I agree. Like I was, since I was like in middle school, I think is when we first started hearing about Russia, and a lot of people were complaining about, just the way they operated and things. And I was like, it's one thing when you're talking about something that's, very blatantly wrong. But a lot of the stuff that we were learning, even in school, I couldn't directly apply and be like, okay, well, it makes sense that you're teaching the class to hate Russia. Like, this is very strange. What does this have to do with everything else that's going on here? You know what I mean? So for a very long time, I've seen this stuff happen. And I kind of was just like, well, I don't really care. I'll take a position when something comes about that really needs me to take a position. But now I'm seeing the same things happen. This has been a long time coming. I don't know how it was in the American system, like growing up, because obviously I grew up in Canada, but this is something that they've been trying to ingrain in our society in a very personal way for a long time. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, every time we see this happening, now we kind of see why, if that makes sense.
Well,
yeah. I mean, even in Hollywood, it's not even just the educational system. Hollywood, like ever since I was a kid, Russia was the bad guys. For a little while there, you would see Muslims as the bad guys, but that stopped like quite a while back. Some people aren't allowed to be the bad guys, and some people are the designated bad guys. And I'm always skeptical of that, because it's the actions that are wrong, and the people who did those actions were bad. But if they're all dead and in history, I'm not going to assume that the people that followed them are guilty of the same thing. You need to show me that that's happened again or something. I'm not going to just...
I just want to circle back on something that you'd mentioned earlier about the indoctrination in the schools and the things that they're getting the kids onto, the puberty blockers and so forth. And a lot of this is coming from abuse and taking away the challenges of the students. And then when you're thinking now that they're fueling drugs, like that woman buying heroin, they know that California's following suit. They're teaching kids how to safely use drugs in school. They're making it accessible. Now you look at the kids, the average kids, like their ages of sexual activity is getting lower and lower in exposure because of the unrestricted things on the pornography on the internet, that they're seeing these things at a young age, and they're fueling in drugs. Now, a lot of this stuff obviously comes into California with OnlyFans. Now it's everywhere, but I mean, they were doing a lot of this. This woman here, she was in pornography. She got out. She described some of the things that she's seeing with the younger people who are now exposed to the increase in drugs and all of these other things. And they're worse than when she started, and she was terribly abused. But these kids that are abused and now they have drugs, just listen to what she has to say here.
Remember, I was married in my 20s, and he and I traveled on the road together. And I'll say one of the reasons that probably didn't work is because we didn't divide our lives. Okay. He enjoyed partying with the girls. He enjoyed us bringing girls back to our hotel. And maybe in the 90s, that was a fun phase of my life. But looking at it now, that would have never worked long term. And that's why it didn't work, because it was putting too much in my zone. It was constantly being Lisa Ann and constantly having people around me that wanted to talk to me about being Lisa Ann.
Yeah.
I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
So it's about, having your own identity. Why do people look at this career any differently than any other?
Right.
Because what the public thinks, because we feel isolated? No, it's what you make of it.
Right.
But again, I was raised by an alcoholic father. I know what it's like. I know about abuse and substance abuse and all those things. So probably the triggers that scared me in the business were good for me.
Yeah.
Because I was so afraid of, oh my gosh, that's going to be me. And that's going to be me. So I just stayed away from everything and everybody.
Right.
My first couple of years, I didn't even go to award shows, events. I was just kind of a little bit afraid of everybody, because when I did go once or twice, I was like, wow, these people really party.
Yeah.
Really, to a point that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always
Why
smoked
do you
weed.
think that is now, though?
So I think that drug use is really just an escape. My escape was always that adventure, that wanting to travel, that wanting to get out and do things. But when we start seeing people shooting 10, 20, 25 days a month, that is so grinding on the psyche. It takes from your soul. It's something that I've never let myself shoot more than 5 days a month, and 2 is really my sweet spot. But there was a moment where I had to cancel a bunch of shoots for something, and I remember I shot 10 days in 1 month. And I remember sitting there at that time and thinking, yeah, I kind of get it. I'm not tempted to do it, but I get it.
Yeah.
It's the only way to completely disconnect, and that's what you're looking for, and that's where the drugs and alcohol come in.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of cutters right now in the business.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and so that's been something for me. So that's beyond my generation.
Yeah.
We didn't do that. So when I first started to see it, I didn't know how to address it. And I've met some girls where it's really bad, they on their legs, on their arms. And so I just feel the need to ask them, have you gone to see somebody about this? Because this is just something that you want to talk to somebody about. Understand it. Because maybe at that time of feeling pressure, maybe it was financial, and maybe because you're making money right now, you're not feeling that pressure.
Yeah.
But you did something to scar yourself. So you need to find a way to process that information and know that when you face your next struggle in life, because struggles come and go.
Yes.
No life is ever without them.
Right.
That you don't fall back into that. And that's something where it's that's the work we need to do. And I tell all the girls this now, money is power.
Yeah.
The most powerful thing you can do is sort your own mind. So
The point is at the end there, where she talks about the differences with the girls that are coming in now. When you start doing all of these things in the schools, and then she talked about in another thing where with the boys, where they're starting to strangle the girls and becoming more violent because they're exposed to pornography at a young age. What do you think they're doing? When you look at all these policies, when you're letting drugs come in freely, you're allowing this corruption to run rampant. You look here in Canada, we have no functioning government, none. So how are they going to stop the flow of drugs coming across into your country when it's like we got a ship we got nobody at the helm of the ship?
And where do these young people go for help even? The medical industry is captured. The psychological industry is captured. They may go to help for their cutting and their depression or whatever and be told, oh, you're really just the opposite sex. Here, now take this. Or here, get on these psychotropics or SSRIs or whatever. I mean, who do they even have to go to for help now?
Go ahead, Kaysha.
Yeah, honestly, as a survivor of trafficking myself, everyone's always like, "Oh, Kaysha, did you get counseling or therapy for anything that you dealt with?" I'm like, for what? For them to indoctrinate me and drug the hell out of me, try to kill me or get me to mutilate myself? Which one? Am I going to pick my... At that point, I'd rather start using crack before I go to therapy. And, I understand how I understand that people, people will self-medicate and other things, because when you go into these places to get help and they say that this is the help that's actually going to get someone back to normal, or like you were talking earlier, Nikki, about, breaking through to the other end of things, realizing that you can win and all those other things. That's what they're telling you that they're going to help you do. But in reality, they're just pushing people back down a dark hole. So it's like at some point someone has to decide, well, I mean, I did, like, I'm just going to win. I'm just going to find a way to win, and I'm just going to do whatever I want. And if you think that I have a problem, then you try and live my life and fix it. And you can't walk a few days in my shoes. What we have right now as a system to help people is complete garbage. It's a dumpster fire. And the people who are trying to get out of anything, like out of that lifestyle, the porn industry or trafficking or whatever, you're screwed. You're almost screwed by, like, your own strength or the grace of God. If you have the ability to overcome, that's just what's going to happen. And you're just going to live with PTSD. You're just going to, I don't know.
I'm going to play one more clip before we wrap up here. This woman was married to a man in the military. She had addiction issues. I don't know when it was, but she was talking about, I guess this was before a child was born. She was talking about when she was in the military and he was away, that she could not afford to feed her child. And then she got into this situation. But when you listen to what she's saying, because of the things that the government has done, you listen to the way that she's ordering her life. She's saying things, but she's not even realizing what she's saying. I'll just play it and we'll see what happens. But I mean, keep in mind, this woman was an addict. Ex-husband was in the military, could not pay for their food for their child when he was stationed away, even with the assistance they gave, but they're giving money to Zelensky, but they can't feed their own families. And then now she's talking about where she's at now.
What can I do? Also, my nails so cute. I have too many things going on. I am a full-time single parent with 2 kids, 2 small kids. I run a business. I'm trying to start another business. I have a puppy. I have so much to clean. It's just like, how can I do all of my appointments to maintain my looks? Do all the things to maintain my daughter's school, my daughter's care, make enough time for them, but also clean the house, keep my car clean, have time to do all the admin stuff for my business, all the messages every single day, let alone find time to do content. I don't have time for any collabs at all with anyone. I have no dating life, no social life. I have zero social life. I don't do anything besides be with my kids and work. That's my entire life, which I love being with my kids all the time and I love making money, but how do I have to? I just don't know what I can simplify, what I can take out, but I need to figure out how to do it because I just don't have enough time in the day for everything I need to do. How can I simplify my life?
What you're watching here right now, that is the end goal of the leftist policies, is what you see that woman right there. Because what she is describing is slavery, 100%. And she is trying to do something that is impossible for her to do because she's been sold a lie. You can't run the business, do all these things by yourself, and look after your kids, be a full-time president. You can't do that. The only how you can do that is go back to having families. That's the only way that's going to get done. It's impossible any other way.
I mean, so I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. And then when I left my ex, I was a single mom raising 3 boys. I don't mean to dog that lady or anything, but I never got my nails done until my kids were grown. I never could afford that. I made sure my kids didn't go without, but I couldn't afford any extras. And I never took any government assistance. And I didn't even get child support because my ex said he would have to leave the state if he were going to pay child support. And I thought my sons needed their dad in their life more than I needed that money. So I made it work. And I sympathize with young people right now because the system has gotten so screwed up that it's really hard for them to make it on their own. It's a really hard environment right now to get work and stuff, to get a good paying job. But you got to go without a lot if you're going to focus on being a single mom. And yeah, the ideal is to be married. Obviously, I did everything the wrong way growing up. But yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it. But yeah, to your point, we shouldn't be sending all our money focusing on helping other people while our people are suffering. We should be focusing on Americans, and Canada should be focusing on Canadians, and each country should be focusing on it. I learned that on a micro level with people. I learned that, and I'm grateful now for how my mom was, because we had to do we had to figure out everything on our own. Life was nothing was done for us. We were toughened up very young, and I'm so grateful for that. I would not trade my childhood for anything, because I figured out very early on that I could conquer anything. But forgot where I was going again.
That's fine. Well, all I'm saying is that, for one, you should have never if you're in the service, your family should be able to be fed.
Yeah.
Right? And then secondly, with all of these policies that they're putting on there, they're putting people in drugs. They're not having the same, the adversity that they have to overcome when they're younger, because they're removing those barriers. And then it's making it harder for the younger generation to end up moving forward and overcoming. Yeah. So then it creates that dependency on being in these situations where they're going to be chasing those things. Now, I don't agree with, obviously, the life choices that girl's making, but I understand that there was also a lot of factors that helped her make it. It made it easier for her to make the wrong choices.
Because they're normalizing bad choices. They've removed stigmas, and some things should be stigmatized. And it's not, they've said, oh, you shouldn't judge people. You don't know everyone's situation, but you still should shoot for the ideal. You should stigmatize. If you're capable of working, it should be stigmatized that you're on government assistance. If you're a drug addict, that should be stigmatized. If you're morbidly obese, that should be stigmatized. And we're not saying that you're inferior. We're saying you're making bad choices and you need to make better choices. And that's not to say that we're better. That's to try to make your life better. And we don't do that. We don't stigmatize anything. We don't stigmatize any of the right things. We stigmatize criticizing government, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Right? Sorry. We just want to make sure that we reward the right choices and give consequences. Mm-hmm. Don't take away the consequences for your actions. That's really the point that it is. Because when you look at it, you also want the people say, listen, if you screwed up and you made a bad choice and you want to get out, we'll help you get out. Because it makes more sense to get people out of bad decisions. And it's a better investment, because once they get out and they don't come back, they become very productive. And what people need is to go back to families, because what that woman needs is a family, not trying to figure out a way to plan to do the work of two people. Nobody can do that.
Yeah. And no job is more important for a mom than being there with her kids.
Yes, that is true.
Even when I had to work, I made sure I was home when my kids were home and awake. I made sure they were never raised by anybody else.
Well, you can't pay somebody to love your kids. And the show we had yesterday was a perfect example of that, where it happened in San Bernardino. They took this woman's kids and they were abusing them badly, and CPS, because they ended up making a bad judgment. They're trying to cover themselves. But we're running up on time, so we'll have to close this one down, but we will be back again. It was great to have you, and we will do this again soon whenever your schedule permits. And I will close with a prayer, and then I will give Kaysha, and I'll give you guys both your final thoughts.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you've given us, and help us that we would come together to fix the problems both on a local level and on a national level. And Father, I ask of you this day to bring the men and women together to rebuild their families, their communities, their churches, and their nation, that we can have some protection for the children who desperately need it, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Dad, for the prayer as always. Nikki, do you want to let everyone know again how they can find you and support you?
Just here on X, and I'm going to work on doing little videos and stuff to try to figure out this media stuff. I'm a hermit, so I'm usually just thinking and writing, but I'm going to expand into video. So hopefully I'll be back here soon.
All right, Kaysha.
No, that's good. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dad, again for the prayer. Thanks, Nikki, of course, again for joining us for part 2. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope it's been very insightful. Please go and follow the page on Rumble, Cali's Corner, and hit the bell notification so you can get notified every time she comes on. She's very insightful, like I said in the previous video. And we always love having her on. She's great, actually. And thank you again for your time and considerations. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little bit tired. It's been a long day. And we'll catch you in the next one. But to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will. Ciao.